Hey all, Dr. Levan here today to talk to you about Chapter 2, which is Business and Staffing Strategy. And you can see on the slide there before you some of our learning objectives for today. I'll let you pause the video and read over those. By the way, this is just a good way to make sure that you've really know the information in the chapters just by asking yourselves these questions. Can you answer all these questions? If you can, you're probably in good shape. So the main purpose that we want to talk about today is this alignment between an organization's business strategy and actually the staffing strategies that you adopt. So I can't help myself but just remind you of my golden slide here, right? What is the mission and vision of the organization? What are the key strategies that the organization has? And how does the HR, and in particular, the staffing strategy align to that? So the first question that you'll want to be able to answer is, what is the overall strategy of our organization? Are we a customer-focused organization? Are we an organization that's focused on growth? Are we in product differentiation or sometimes a product specialization strategy that we have? Or do we have a cost efficiency strategy? So again, if you think of maybe particular institutions, customer that might be somebody like Neiman Marcus, for example. A growth strategy, that might be an early company. I'm even thinking of Tesla, who is really trying to grow their market quickly. Product differentiation, maybe somebody like Apple, who tends to be innovative. Or maybe, again, an efficiency organization would be somebody like Walmart. And these actually tend to change throughout the life cycle of an organization. Typically, you'll have a startup company. They'll be focused on a product differentiation. Then we get into this growth mode. As you mature, you tend to focus a little bit on customer service. And then once you've kind of reached your pinnacle, you usually get into a cost efficiency mode, or sometimes you'll have a revival. You'll get a new segment. Amazon, for example, if you've noticed over their course, they started off with books, and then they got into movies, and then other kinds of products, and now they bought Whole Foods. So they continue to try to be in this growth mode in their organization. So what's your strategy, and how's that going to then dictate your staffing strategy in particular? And you can just see some ideas here. For example, pardon me, I'm losing my voice. So for example, if you're Walmart, what kind of staffing strategy will you have? What kind of personnel are you going to be looking for to make sure that your organization can meet its strategic objectives? Obviously, Walmart is a low-cost provider, so they're probably not going to be paying top dollars. Matter of fact, we know they're not going to be paying top dollar for their employees, and they're just going to probably try to get folks in, and quite honestly, they don't spend a lot of time on the folks that they get in. You'll see that there's more turnover in those types of organization, but that's something that they've just learned to accept and be comfortable with in the business of retail. What if you have a product leadership strategy? Totally different philosophy there. You start to think of maybe, again, Apple, where I need the top engineers. I need the top talent to to be able to differentiate myself in the market. Again, if I'm in a customer type of environment here, what kind of person that may I be looking for, as well as if I'm in a growth market? Again, all that to say is, do I understand the strategy of our business, and what does that mean to me specifically working in the recruiting department of my organization? Now, another thing about strategic staffing is that you need to make some decisions up front. Let's go over a few of those. First decision you have to make is, are you going to do the staffing function internally, or are you going to do that externally? So in other words, if your organization rarely hires people, rarely has any turnover, you might say, hey, look, I'll just contract out with a staffing agency when I need to hire somebody. Otherwise, if you have a higher rate of turnover, maybe a larger organization where you have to hire more employees, it's really strategic, it's really important to you, you're going to say, I really want to do this function internally. Are you going to have this function centralized in your organization, or are you going to have this decentralized? So when you think about somebody like Walmart again, how much of the staffing function will be done in their headquarters in Arkansas, and how much will be done at the local and regional stores that they have? How about hiring internally or externally? Do you want to primarily go out externally into the market to find your new employees, or are you hoping to find employees internally within the organization? Are you going to hire for competencies, or are you going to train those competencies? So in other words, if I'm hiring, let's just say, a mechanic or something like that, do I want to hire somebody who already has those skills, or am I going to say, nope, it's fine, I'll hire them and then I'll train, I want to train them in my own way anyway. Very important that you know what you're looking for up front. Proactive or reactive hiring. For example, if your organization has a lot of turnover, are you going to plan, say, hey, I know that I'm going to probably lose and have to hire 50 people every year, and if I'm in a hiring mode and I see a couple of good folks, maybe I don't need to have them right away, but I'll know I'll need them soon, and I think they're a good employee. I'm going to go ahead and proactively hire some folks versus being reactive in that hiring process. Am I going to replace or retain talent? That may sound kind of strange, but when you want to retain talent, that means you have to do certain things in your organization to make sure folks stay. That also means that you hire differently. You're going to hire for someone who you think is going to be with you over a long period of time. How are you going to brand yourself as an employer? You want to hopefully get a reputation in the marketplace. I'm thinking of places like Google. It's like, that's a great organization to work for. Maybe Boeing, like, oh, they've got a lot of benefits and they pay well. So you can brand yourself, which is going to help you attract top quality talent. Core versus flexible staffing. Very important decision to make up front. In some instances, you may say, hey, look, I don't want to hire folks long term. I want some flexible staffing arrangements, so maybe I'll hire temporary workers or independent contractors, and in some cases, you'll even outsource to a third-party vendor, which is called a PEO, or Professional Employment Organization. How about recruiting and the EEOC? Diversity considerations. What kind of diversity are you looking for when you hire folks? That's going to determine where you go to look to find the folks that you want for your organization. And certainly, what is your overall talent philosophy? And here are just a few questions that you're going to want to ask yourself with that. I'll let you read these, but going over a couple of them there. Do we want people to contribute to the company overall long-term careers, or do we want to focus on filling vacancies for the short term? What kind of employee are we looking for? That's certainly going to affect the type of recruiting that we do. I'll jump to the last one here really quickly. What are our ethical principles when it comes to our employees? So how do we plan to treat our employees? Certainly, at a minimum, your organization needs to be following the ethical standards outlined in the law. It means no discrimination. When you test employees, you want to be respectful. So again, you want to think about those decisions up front. And the power of doing this, by the way, is that when you publish these things, when you circulate these things, it begins to create a culture and a mindset in the organization of how you're going to treat people. Your text, it gets into this concept of resource-based view. And how does that relate to staffing? Again, that's really a mindset. When you think of a resource-based view, you're thinking, I believe that my employees are a differentiator in the marketplace. So you may feel that or you may not. So for example, let's just say you're hiring car sales persons. So you might say, oh, look, the real differentiator in my organization is the product, or in this case, a car. And you might think, so I'm not really going to worry so much about what kind of people come into the organization. Or you can say, no, a very key part of what we are in our organization is the people that we bring on to that organization. And I like to point you back to Chick-fil-A again. There's a difference in the kind of employees that Chick-fil-A hires to the kinds of employees that other organizations, fast food restaurants, hire. And you can see that in the product that they deliver. And some would argue that it's more the people of Chick-fil-A that differentiate that organization than it is their chicken sandwich. Also, we get into kind of a little bit of a bridge to this is human capital versus human process. The way your textbook sets this up, it's a little bit like an either or, but I would say it's more of a both and. Not either or, but both and. So in other words, how are we going to differentiate our environment? Again, are we going to do that through our people, or are we going to say, no, our process is what's key. When we get people into the organization, we're going to heavily train them on our process. They're going to follow our process, and that's really where the quality comes in. And again, I think both of these are very important, and I personally would advocate both of those. Another strategic decision, again, we have to look here is, are we going to use a talent-oriented approach or a job-oriented approach? Really kind of saying the same thing again. Are we looking at someone, we want them to be talented and have the competencies for the job, but are we going to kind of bring them in for that job? Or are we going to say to ourselves, hey, when I find a quality person, I might not even have an open position for them yet, but I'm going to take the time and make sure I bring those folks in. Talent-oriented approach is also a good way sometimes you bring these folks in just so that they don't go to your competitors. All right, that's a quick overview of what we have for Chapter 2 and really making this connection between our strategic business plans and connecting those to our staffing plans as well. So we'll see you here again next time when we go back on Chapter 3. Thanks so much for your attendance today.